Mortality is a scary subject, and many artists have written songs about it, pondering that eternal question of what's waiting on the other side. However, some musicians have predicted their own deaths in a way that's weirdly accurate. There's no denying that Tupac Shakur will go down in history as one of the greatest rappers of all time. Part of what made him such an iconic figure was his intelligent understanding of society and culture.
I believe strongly that my audience empathize with me because I show that side. I show that emotion, raw, uncut, good and bad.
The man who made thug life into a household phrase also had a strong feeling early on in his life that he'd never make it to old age. Back in 1994, an interviewer asked him where he thought he'd see himself in 15 years.
Best case in the cemetery. Not in the cemetery. Sprinkled in ashes, smoked up by my homies.
He quickly corrected this to say that that was a worst-case scenario, and he'd rather be a multimillionaire than dead. But that wasn't the only time Tupac expressed such certainty about an early death. In 1995, Tupac told Vibe magazine that he was giving them what he called his final interview, expressing a desire to have his story told accurately before he died. Then, in 1996, he filmed the music video I Ain't Mad At Ya, which depicted him in the afterlife, communicating with his loved ones. Just a few weeks later, Tupac's life ended in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He was only 25 years old. Lisa Lopez, best known as Left Eye of TLC, was only 30 years old in 2002. But her life had already become an explosive cocktail of controversial headlines, domestic abuse, and public fallouts. That year, Lopez flew to Honduras for a recovery sabbatical and to film a documentary about her life. Throughout the documentary, her belief in premonitions was a focal point.
Which is funny, because whatever your fear is, it seems to manifest here, like that.
Sadly, things took a dark turn. A van she was riding in collided with a young boy who didn't survive his injuries. Though Left Eye had only been a passenger in the van, she still paid for all of the boy's hospital and funeral costs.
Can you tell the family that whatever they decide to do, we can help? Whatever choices they make.
According to documentary footage from the time, she was noticeably chilled by the fact that she and the boy shared a surname.
These are the shoes that belong to the little boy. And his last name was Lopez.
According to the documentary footage, she became convinced that some sort of malevolent spirit was following her, meaning to kill her instead of the boy. Later, while still in Honduras, the car Left Eye was driving swerved off the side of the road. The chilling moment was caught on film. She did not survive the crash. The world recoiled in shock when John Lennon was shot, but Lennon himself might have been less surprised than everyone else. Frida Kelly, who worked as a secretary for the Beatles when she was a teenager, told The Guardian, "The first thing that came into my mind when he died was that he used to say, 'I won't be here when I'm 40. I won't make 40.'" However, Kelly's story isn't the first time that someone has talked about Lennon's cynical expectations for his future. Newsweek revealed that all the way back in 1965, Lennon told a reporter his expectations for himself and his fellow bandmates, sharing, "We'll either go in a plane crash or we'll be popped off by some loony." He was right.
Lennon was shot and killed at about 11 o'clock last night outside his apartment building.
He was 40. The public generally accepts that Michael Jackson died from an overdose, but who was responsible? According to the courts, the answer was Jackson's doctor, Conrad Murray, who was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. However, not everyone buys the notion that Jackson's death was an accident. The singer's daughter, Paris Jackson, told Rolling Stone she believes the truth is a lot more sinister and says everyone in her family agrees with her on this. She said, "He would drop hints about people being out to get him, and at some point he was like, 'They're gonna kill me one day.'" In his last weeks alive, Michael Jackson wrote letters to one of his closest friends claiming he was going to be murdered and was terrified for his life. Jackson's ex-wife, Lisa Marie Presley, once told a similar anecdote to Oprah regarding the singer's belief that someone wanted him dead, allegedly in order to seize the money from his music publishing catalog. What really happened? Was Jackson scared of a real threat, or was it just paranoia? Rapper Hasse Dwayne Onfroy, known by his stage name XXXTentacion, rose to prominence after dropping his first track on SoundCloud in 2014 and releasing his first studio album in August 2017. But his musical success wasn't the only thing that came to define him. In 2016, his girlfriend accused him of assault and abuse, which she said was a frequent occurrence. In October that year, he allegedly strangled her, severely beat her, and locked her up for 2 days because she was pregnant. She went to the police, and X was arrested. The trial kept getting pushed back, all the way into 2018. At some point in early 2018, X posted a video to Instagram speaking straight to the camera.
It's the worst, fucking die a tragic death or shit, and I'm not able to see out my dreams.
The court case never happened. On June 18, 2018, X was shot to death in Florida in what police believe was a drive-by shooting. He was 20 years old. According to Music News, singer Amy Winehouse's friend Alex Foden said she knew she wasn't destined for a long life. Amy always told me she thought she would die young and that she knew she'd become a part of the 27 Club. For those who don't know, the 27 Club consists solely of artists who died at the age of 27, including such luminaries as Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Kurt Cobain. And Winehouse did, in fact, die in 2011 at the age of 27. The coroner's report revealed Winehouse died from alcohol poisoning. That's not too surprising, considering the singer was prone to doing everything in excess.
What makes me crazy? Alcohol doesn't do nice things to me. I'm quite a horrible drunk. Quite a horrible drunk, actually.
Winehouse reportedly had a pronounced problem with drugs and alcohol and suffered from bulimia, which likely left her body too weak to handle all the other excesses. Let's just ignore the fact that plenty of celebrities died at the age of 26, and plenty of celebrities died at 28. For some reason, we only think it's spooky when famous people die at the age of 27. It's bizarre and entirely tragic that Winehouse correctly predicted she'd be joining their ranks. Some eerie coincidences preceded the death of rapper Mac Miller, whose last music video for the single Self-Care featured him lying in a casket. The video's theme is the downward spiral of addiction, and it even included a scene where Miller carves the Latin phrase memento mori into the casket. If you were fortunate enough to avoid Latin in school, that means remember that you have to die. Miller wasn't exactly secretive about his substance abuse.
I've proved to myself that I can be faded all the time, make great music, and make it day to day and carry on.
In 2013, he told Complex that he'd had a hard time dealing with criticism after his first album, especially when it seemed deliberately cruel. A lot of the reviews were more on me as a person. Miller was just a kid when his first album came out, and he handled that negativity badly. He started taking promethazine, a drug that is used to treat allergies and motion sickness. Promethazine is also a strong sedative that can become addictive, and it can be deadly when taken in excess. Promethazine didn't kill him, though. In fact, he kicked that habit but moved on to more serious drugs. The coroner reported that the rapper died from a lethal cocktail of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol. The D12 rapper Proof was in a nightclub in his hometown when he was shot and killed during an argument. 2 years before that, on the 2004 album D12 World, he rapped, "I'm in the club to beef, you gotta murder me there." That's eerily specific, considering that Proof was murdered in a club, and the circumstances of his death are even weirder when you consider his participation in Eminem's 2005 music video for Like Toy Soldiers, which dramatizes the murder of D12 member Bugs. Proof portrayed the deceased rapper in the video, even reenacting his murder. Watching the rapper act out a situation all too similar to his own death makes for an intensely eerie viewing experience. Proof's friend H. Mack told The Guardian Proof wasn't the sort of guy who would initiate a gunfight over something stupid. So there's not much reason to feel like that was an especially likely way for Proof to go. Many fans believed Bob Marley was a sort of prophet, like Nostradamus, only with musical talent and cooler hair. According to the book Bob Marley, Musician, Marley's mother claimed he was able to predict the future even as a small child, and some people believe he predicted the modern wars in Ukraine, Iraq, and Syria. But perhaps the weirdest of all his predictions was the one about his own death. When Marley was 24, he told friends exactly how old he'd be when he died. "I know I'm going to die at 36. In 1977, Marley was diagnosed with melanoma under the nail of his big toe. Doctors recommended amputation, but as a Rastafarian, Marley believed amputation was sinful, so he refused treatment, and by the summer of 1980, the cancer had spread throughout his body. He flew to Germany in the hope that a doctor who peddled controversial cancer treatments might offer a cure, but holistic medicine didn't seem to help. Marley decided to return to Jamaica to die, but he didn't make it that far. He died during a stopover in Miami on May 11, 1981. As he predicted, he was 36. Folk music star John Denver will always be remembered for bonfire melodies like Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Annie's Song. But his first stepping stone toward musical stardom was his song, Babe, I Hate to Go.
Nature has always been the source of the greatest contentment in my life.
According to CNN, the song first became a hit when it was re-recorded by folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary under a new title, Leaving on a Jet Plane. The lyrics to Leaving on a Jet Plane involve the singer saying goodbye to a loved one shortly before getting on plane, repeatedly stating that he doesn't know when he'll be back and that he hates to go. These lines proved to be horribly uncanny, though certainly not by design. In 1997, Denver was piloting his own private plane down the coast of California when the engine failed, sending him crashing into the ocean. He was the only person on board. He was 53. When you think about talented artists who were taken from us far too soon, the name Jeff Buckley quickly springs to mind.
Played my first gig in a club, and that was it, okay, I like this. It smells bad, I can be here.
Dream Brother is one Jeff Buckley song that particularly stands out because it's a haunting melody paired with lyrics about drowning. It's hard not to be struck by the lyrics regarding a dark angel of death with black feathery wings, but the most eerie line of the song has to be, asleep in the sand with the ocean washing over. The lyric foretold what was coming in Buckley's future. In 1997, Rolling Stone reported that Buckley and a friend had decided to go take a dip in the Wolf River channel of the Mississippi River, with disastrous consequences. The river, known for being a risky place to swim, carried Buckley away and he disappeared. After 6 days of searching, his body was found washed up on the shore. At the time of his death, he was only 30 years old. Country music star Merle Haggard probably knew he was going to die just based on everything his body had been through in the last few months of his life.
We want to continue, and we don't want to ever die. And that's the next big event once you retire.
According to Heavy, Haggard's health had forced him to cancel a number of shows, and his diagnosis of double pneumonia was pretty dire for someone who was about to turn 79. But the weirdest thing about Haggard's death is that the singer seemed to know exactly the day of his death, a week before it actually happened. On the day of his father's death, Haggard's son, Ben, wrote on Instagram, "A week ago, Dad told us he was going to pass on his birthday, and he wasn't wrong. An hour ago, he took his last breath." It could have been a lucky guess, or perhaps Haggard was so in tune with his body that he instinctively knew how many days were left in him. With songs like Everything Dies and Love You to Death, it wouldn't be out of line to assume typo-negative frontman Peter Steele had a preoccupation with death.
You happy to be here?
I'm less miserable.
Okay, you're less miserable.
Not only did Steele write a lot of songs about death and dying, he also regularly predicted his own death, attempted suicide, and at one point basically faked his own death. According to Loudwire, in 2005, the band posted an announcement on their website that Steele had died when he had in fact been involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital. So really, it's not that weird that Peter Steele predicted his own death, because he'd been doing it for years. What is weird is he seemed to predict the exact manner of his death. It's the lyrics to the 2003 song I Don't Want to Be Me that are especially creepy. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Without warning, heart attack. 7 years later, the 48-year-old singer was sick in bed with the flu when he unexpectedly died from an aortic aneurysm. That's not technically the same thing as a heart attack. An aortic aneurysm is actually a bulge in the aorta that can burst or lead to other problems, including heart attack and stroke. It's not clear which of these secondary problems led to Steele's death. What is clear is these 2003 lyrics proved eerily apt. Rock star Warren Zevon was best known for his 1978 song Werewolves of London, but he also wrote a song called The Factory in 1987. Despite its seemingly upbeat sound, the lyrics tell the story of a man following in his father's footsteps, slaving away in a factory to support his family and eventually inhaling cancerous substances like polyvinyl chloride, plastic, and asbestos. Decades later, tragedy struck, or at least a prior tragedy became publicly known. What Zevon didn't realize when he wrote the song was that his own exposure to asbestos which probably happened during his childhood when asbestos was all over the place, had caused irreversible damage to his lungs. Zevon was reportedly diagnosed with pleural mesothelioma in 2002 and given a terminal prognosis.
Because I seem to have already exceeded one of the predictions, which was that I only had a few months.
Zevon declined treatment and spent the last months of his life finishing up his final album, The Wind, which he released just before he died in 2003. Back in his day, Jackie Wilson, also known as Mr. Excitement, was a legendary performer who put out over 50 hit singles in his lifetime. According to the Winston-Salem Journal, his personal life was more troubled, often plagued by relationship problems, personal drama, and alcoholism. In 1975, Wilson was on stage in New Jersey belting out his famous song Lonely Teardrops when he was struck by a heart attack. In a tragic twist, the words Wilson was singing as his chest seized up were reportedly, "My heart is crying." Wilson collapsed before the audience and was rushed to the hospital. He didn't die that day, but his bumpy path continued. He spent a few months in a coma before regaining consciousness, but he was immobile and unable to speak. He was transferred between various care facilities in a vegetative state for almost 9 years before finally passing away in 1984. It seems like Avicii saw it coming. In the 2017 Netflix documentary Avicii True Stories, the Swedish musician and DJ behind the hits Levels and Wake Me Up said he was going to die if he didn't retire from performing.
Sagt till dem så här. Jag kommer inte kunna spela längre. Jag har sagt att jag kommer dö. Jag har sagt jättemånga gånger. Jag kommer inte kunna spela mer. Då vill inte jag höra att de ens ska underhålla.
This certainty of impending death seemed to motivate his 2016 retirement, as he felt that his health problems and alcoholic tendencies would overwhelm him if he didn't step back from the spotlight. But he said he still felt a constant pressure to do more gigs, despite the anxiety it gave him. In 2018, Avicii, whose real name was Tim Bergling, was found dead in a resort in Muscat, Oman. His family later released a public statement that implied he'd committed suicide. He was only 28 years old.